Let me begin by sending America's deepest sympathies to the people of Lebanon, where reports indicate that many people were killed. Hundreds more were very badly wounded in a large explosion in Beirut. Our prayers go out to all the victims and their families. The United States stands ready to assist Lebanon. We have a very good relationship with the people of Lebanon, and we will be there to help. It looks like a terrible attack.
On Lebanon, you called this an attack. Are you confident that this was an attack and not an accident?
Well, it would seem like it based on the explosion. I've met with some of our great generals, and they just seemed to feel that it was. This was not some kind of a manufacturing explosion type of event. This was seems to be, according to them, they would know better than I would, but they seem to think it was a attack. It was a bomb of some kind, yes.
Interesting.
The death toll rising in Beirut, a city in ruin just a day after a massive explosion. The blast devastating the Lebanese capital, where rescue workers continue their search for survivors. A 2-week state of emergency is now in effect, handing control of the city's security to the military. The move declared by Lebanon's government Wednesday through a spokesperson. And the country's cabinet instructing the military to impose house arrest on anyone involved since 2014 in the handling of the port warehouse, the site of the explosion, pending an investigation. The Lebanese president, promising a transparent probe, says the blast was caused by some 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate, a fertilizer and explosive stored unsafely. There are reports inspectors warned 6 months ago the port could blow up if the material wasn't removed.
Speechless, really.
Visiting the disaster zone, Beirut's mayor estimating damages could be in the billions of dollars, and rebuilding could take a year.
You know, we feel so sorry for the losses that we had.
Losses in a country already reeling from an economic crisis and a surge in coronavirus infections.
Just after 6 p.m. local time on Tuesday, the 4th of August, an explosion ripped through Beirut's port. People in Lebanon's capital had earlier spotted a large fire at the port, billowing dark smoke into the air. There were reports that a warehouse containing fireworks had caught fire. And several videos of the scene showed coloured flashes in the flames. Videos from the scene suggest there was one smaller explosion. And then roughly 30 seconds later, this enormous shock. The blast struck with the force of a 3.5 magnitude earthquake. This was the aftermath. Windows shattered in buildings across the city and damaged cars on the roads near the port. This is where the explosion happened. 4 kilometers away, in the St. Mar Meroun church, a priest and his congregation were taking part in Mass. The explosion was caught on camera 11 kilometers away in the Dabia Marina. The blast was so big that it was heard from the mountains. This video from the town of Brumana, 15 kilometers away, shows how far the shockwave reached. It was even heard and felt as far away as Cyprus, more than 125 miles across the Mediterranean. Aerial shots show the scale of the destruction of the port. It reportedly housed 85% of Lebanon's supply of grain, which was a strategic food reserve in a country crippled by economic meltdown. You can see the impact on the Beirut port silos building before and after the explosion. Surrounding the silos were corrugated iron and steel structures that have mostly been destroyed. These satellite images reveal the extent of the damage. This crater was once a warehouse. Now it's underwater. The colossal force was caused by the explosion of 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate, a highly reactive chemical which was being stored unsafely in a hangar on the port. Lebanon's Prime Minister Hassan Diab has promised that those responsible for the catastrophe will pay the price.
It's a very kind thing to put this flag on this building. I like to watch it. I think that the citizens seems to care about the things that happens in the world and not just here in Israel.
I'm so excited for this. At least we can show some solidarity. First time in history now that we are using the Lebanese flag in terms of solidarity, and it's a very special day, so I'm really excited for this.
I hope the reaction for this will be good.
אתמול היה בלבנון אסון גדול מאוד, ואנחנו ערוכים להושיט סיוע הומניטרי ללבנון כבני אדם לבני אדם.
Now, in addition to French aid, Iran, the United States, and even Lebanon's arch-rival Israel have offered to help. For more, we can go across to France 24's Iris Makler standing by in Jerusalem for us. Iris, has that offer of Israeli aid been accepted?
No, it hasn't. There have been a series of offers. The president, the foreign minister, the defense minister, two directors of Israeli hospitals in the north, Arabic speakers, turning in Arabic to the population of Lebanon and saying our hospitals are open for you. Israel has very good reputation and experience with tracking people who are underground We saw that in Haiti during the earthquake there. None of that makes any difference. There's too much enmity between the two, and there hasn't been a word of reply from Lebanon to these offers.
You know, you picked up on a point I wanted to ask you, because is there just simply too much bad blood between the two sides that the Lebanese simply cannot, brush aside the history, even though they're on their knees at this point in time?
Yes, I think that's right. We can't forget that Israel was in and out of Lebanon for 20 years as an occupying army. In fact, the defense minister and the foreign minister who signed one of these offers of aid to the Lebanese are two former commanders in that occupying army. So everything is very complicated between these two neighbours. Even if Lebanese people might be persuaded that they themselves were in such need they could go to an Israeli hospital, we did see that with Syrians during the Syrian war. They have another problem, and that's the Islamist group Hezbollah, Lebanese, homegrown, but attached to Iran, led by Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah. He's not going to allow Lebanese to go down into Israel, for Israel to make any profit from this, since he's actually almost involved in a current crisis. He was about to make a speech tonight, that's been cancelled. So perhaps it was a speech aimed at Israel. So for all those reasons, it's just too tense and too complicated. And I have to say it actually is a shame, because on the ground in Israel there's a huge amount of fellow feeling and absolute horror at the pictures emerging from Lebanon.
Iris, thank you very much for that. Iris Mackler reporting there from Jerusalem.
Well, today we usher in a new era of peace between Israel and the Arab world. I just came from an historic virtual conference between myself, President Donald Trump, and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed of the United Arab Emirates. We announced the establishment of a full and formal peace between Israel and the UAE. It includes the mutual opening of embassies, direct flights, and many, many other bilateral agreements. This is the greatest advancements toward peace between Israel and the Arab world in the last 26 years, and it marks the third formal peace between Israel and an Arab nation. In 1979, Prime Minister Menachem Begin made peace with Egypt. In 1994, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin signed a peace treaty with Jordan, and today I'm honored to announce a formal peace agreement with the United Arab Emirates. I believe there's a good chance we will soon see more Arab countries joining this expanding circle of peace. I want to thank President Trump for his critical help in brokering this historic accord, and I want to thank him for his revolutionary vision for peace, which is the most realistic and important formula for peace in the region. President Trump's Middle East plan served as a basis for today's historic peace announcement. Israel and the UAE are two of the most advanced countries in the world. Together, we'll transform the region and forge an even better future for our people. This is a future of peace, a future of security, and a future of prosperity. I've always believed that we could establish peace with the Arab world, and I've been working towards that lofty goal for decades. You may not know it, but I've been doing it all the time, in meetings that are publicized and in many that are not. In Washington, in the Middle East, in daylight, and in nighttime. In recent years, Israel under my leadership has made advancement with ties with such countries as Sudan, Oman, Bahrain, and other nations in the Gulf. I have reason to be very optimistic that today's announcement with the UAE will be followed by more Arab nations joining our region's circle of peace. And to the people of Abu Dhabi and its leader, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed, I say, Salam alaikum, Shalom aleichem, peace unto thee, peace unto all of us. Thank you.
Just a few moments ago, I hosted a very special call with two friends, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed of the United Arab Emirates, where they agreed to finalize a historical peace agreement. Everybody said this would be impossible. And as you know, Mohammed is one of the great leaders of the Middle East. After 49 years, Israel and the United Arab Emirates will fully normalize their diplomatic relations. They will exchange embassies and ambassadors and begin cooperation across the board and on a broad range of areas, including tourism, education, healthcare, trade, and security. This is a truly historic moment. Not since the Israel-Jordan peace treaty was signed more than 25 years ago has so much progress been made towards peace in the Middle East. By uniting two of America's closest and most capable partners in the region, something which said could not be done, this deal is a significant step towards building a more peaceful, secure, and prosperous Middle East. Now that the ice has been broken, I expect more Arab and Muslim countries will follow the United Arab Emirates lead, and I want to just thank them for being, it's not surprising, knowing Mohammed so well, it's not surprising they are in that lead position.
¿Cómo están los hospitales a reventar de pacientes COVID? A tope, a tope. A tope, señores. Tope, señores. ¿Cómo están los hospitales? Me voy que me infecto. Qué pena. Cómo nos tienen engañados.